This has been on my mind for some time, since I was talking to Iris about how she goes about her business. Uh, a while back, one of our guys reached out to her about fitting a piece, chalk fitting, on a Monteleone guitar that turned out really well, and I got her on to talk about her technique for chalk fitting. And then I also played around with it a little bit on a 335 that I did some that had some toggle switches that the guy wanted removed, and I filled with maple. And I kind of figured out a workaround for doing chalk fitting and not being able to, like in the violin world, if they do a bass bar or a sound post patch, they glue in these temporary little blocks that register the sound post patch so that it goes in the same spot every time. You can use chalk to fit, and it works really well, but if if your item is not registered and is moving around, you're going to be removing material from spots that are giving you false positives, because you're moving into different spots on the things. So kind of hard to do with finish on the guitar, because gluing things to the finish is a good way to go backwards in a repair. So we're going to deal with that. And then also I decided in cleaning up for those scoops on the 335, I decided to tune my gouges up. And as a result, I actually started playing around with the original, where the term scoopy came from, and started playing around with my gouges to produce what I would have produced before by grinding in the veneer into the divot. And I got some really good results with it. So I figured, keeping gouges tuned up is not for everybody, and it's certainly not for me in all instances. So I'll probably always be paint and putty. I'll probably always be doing kind of that grind the veneer into the divot thing. But I think I'm adding, this scoop technique to the list too. And so I thought I'd show you this. This is basically what we're doing here is kind of this thing, which I don't know if you can see that, but I put my gouge in there and pulled this guy out. And you can imagine, let me get that. You can imagine that this, by virtue of being the gouge mark and the piece taken from the gouge, like if I was to glue that back in there, you'd have a very faint line around that where material was somewhat removed, but by and large that's going to fit really well. Like if I was just to glue that in, it would fit really well. And then also if I was to take and run that gouge and put a gouge impression over this and fit it in there, it's probably going to fit pretty good, because the gouge has the same exact shape. So I thought I'd run you kind of like my hillbilly technique for keeping my gouges going, which is I don't have any setup to really hollow grind these, so I'm not hollow grinding them. You can spend a lot of money getting things that will hold your gouges and put them at the grinder at the right angle. I'm sure that gets a really, really fine result. It hasn't come up that I need, laser precision with my gouges yet. I've been able to kind of work with, sticking my tongue out the side of my mouth and trying really hard has produced a result good enough for guitar stuff. So we haven't really gone over sharpening a whole lot, but Ted, just like on a chisel, you want two highly polished surfaces coming together. In general, once you get this backside polished, you should never have to touch this again. Like this backside of this chisel, unless I do something stupid to it, it never sees anything but 8,000 grit sharpening stones. And then this side is what the bevel side is actually what I keep beveling when I lose my hollow grind and I kind of wonk the when I wonk the bevel, I'll grind it again. And then this will see, 1,000, 4,000, and 8,000 grit through. But by and large, this backside, once you get it to a high, you know, to a high gloss and it's ready to go, you shouldn't really need to do, boy, that's hard to get. You shouldn't really need to do much of that. You can see I've got like a couple little marks in here and it's not like 100%, but it's pretty good. So also in the gouges, like this inside part, like it would be preferable if this was like mirror polish. This one is a brand new gouge to me. I've had it for some time and I've just started the process of kind of bringing it in line. And so I'm still using something to polish up the inside of it. There's a couple different ways to do it. I'm going to have Tim or Joel come on and show their technique for gouging into a piece of wood and then putting compounds on the piece of wood to bring it up. I have this old, actually, hold on a second. Ted, if you could pull up yeah. So this is an old cone sharpening stone. I think this came from Grizzly. I believe this is about 4,000 grit. But so on this one, I've actually gouged into this side so that it fits this. And you don't want to put like a bevel on the inside of it. You want it to be pretty flat in here. And so I'm just bringing up this side like yo. I also took and I gouged out in here on the opposite side. And so I can work my bevel. I can work the bevel side this way on here. So that's about 4,000. And then what really brings this into shape for me is this is an 8,000 grit stone right here. And I just kind of like freehand it. I put it on the bevel, kind of feel where it's at. And then I roll it almost like you would do like a convex plane, like the finger planes. It's very similar to what I would do with a finger plane blade if I was sharpening that. And then that's pretty much ready to go. I usually test it on my arm hair a little bit, kind of see if it's like grabbing and pulling arm hair off. But feels pretty good. So this wound on this board, so there's kind of a limitation. One of the other reasons why this doesn't come out very much is the size that this becomes easy, or the size of the gouge determines the size of the scoop that you can do. And so there are real limitations. Like I could do like a series of gouge, a series of scoopies from left to right and cover some stuff. I don't know that would look all that good, but like the size that you can actually scoop with this is the limitation of the size of repair that you can do with it. Like with the kind of the grind in method, like I can take like a big, kind of crazy divot and just grind veneer into it with the gel CA, and you can do some pretty big scoops pretty effectively. This is like, you get this size and this shape and that's about it. So this wound right here is a little bit smaller than the wounds that I was like regularly producing. This is a 1/4 inch thing, and this is like a good size. This comes up frequently. Somebody's put in a mini toggle on a D18 top or something like that, or something roughly this size. I mean, you can go up in size with the gouges, but if these kinds of wounds come up all the time, and if you can like peel a nice scoopy and put in a nice donor piece, they can look pretty good. So this is another one of the reasons why I kind of lean away from I've always done kind of the grind in veneer technique, is I'm gonna have to make this wound bigger in order for it to accept the scoop. So this procedure is gonna start like something roughly like this. So I'm going both directions, trying to avoid getting under some run out and lifting something up. That'd be pretty, if this was a real guitar and you got under some run out and you ran this big, like strip of wood up the run out pattern, like it would be pretty tragic. Like that. Yeah. How's that looking? Can everybody kind of make out what I've done there? Anything obscured about that? So the next phase, of course, is to take and try to get a decent donor piece. So I'm kind of wiggling this, pushing it in and wiggling. I go out for the other direction and see what I get. That's fairly reasonable. Got a little bit of, styration. I don't know what I would call that, but a little bit of wiggle where the clamp or where the gouge wiggled is evident there, but it's still a pretty good swipe at it. So if I felt like I had run out going in this, and sometimes even if I don't, like if I really want to secure this this piece and make sure that it doesn't kind of fray around, um, I might saturate this with thin CA. But it's pretty much ready to go in there. Um, might put thin CA on the backside, but I don't think so. I've got a pretty good color mismatch here. Um, once I once I glue this in with CA, that CA has a tendency to penetrate the wood and make it so that you can't really do much at the wood level, changing the color of the wood. So if I was going to bleach this, which I probably would if I was going to game this on a repair, I'd bleach it at this point before I glued it in. This would be a good candidate for bleaching too because it's so much darker. And I find that almost all of my repairs work better with fairly neutral wood color that I modify with colors afterwards.
What would you use to bleach that?
Wood bleach. So I've been using the I picked this up here recently. This is the Zinsser 2-part wood bleach. Very good results from this. If anybody goes back and they look at, there was a Guild headstock break that I did that it looked terrible for a couple reasons. One, the guy didn't do any finish work to it, but it was a type of mahogany that when all of the oxidation layers were broken, like the first coat of lacquer on it turned the neck like bright purple, and it was just like the oxidized wood surrounding it just was not even remotely that color. I was able to use this wood bleach to kind of bring it into line before I touched it up, and without that, it would have been impossible. I would have like had to paint it white and bring it up from white. It was so ridiculous. So real similar to the grind technique. I'll fill this a little bit with gel CA. Stick this guy in there. Start crushing it in. I'm going to take some wax paper and spray some accelerator on the wax paper. Wax paper over the scoop. And bring it in. So real similar to the, grinding in the veneer thing. This just fits. It fits better. So for anybody who hasn't seen it yet, my next step would be to, after this is cured off, my next step would be to take some sticky sanding paper on plexi and start working this down. I'd probably take and risk it with my chisel and take a little bit off with the chisel first.
We're not really getting any of the chiseling. You're leaning over here. I think the other way, ideally.
What's that? Oh, I just gotta get my
Can
dumb
you
head
shift
out of the
the?
way. Can you see me?
Yeah, you're good.
I just gotta not get my dumb head in the way. This would be something eventually that I would use the loose saber for. If anybody's been following the loose saber.
We're losing focus to your head again.
How are we looking?
Perfect.
Depending on what I was trying to do with pore fill, I might start like maybe sealing this with a little bit of CA. I don't know. Like once you seal it with CA, you're pretty much the only way you're going to get it to take pore fill is to like cut in fake pores. But the fact of the matter is the very edges of it are going to be so penetrated with CA that you're going to wind up, if you try to like get some dye to take in the wood, it'll kind of get a bullseye effect because the very edges of it where it's tapering out are going to like be completely set. Even with gel CA are going to be saturated with CA enough to where it's going to be an issue. Any questions up to this point? So this technique is like these small scoops are really good. Like if you do a patch on something, like it's hard to do like, like it's hard to do big scoops like this. But if you do a patch on something and you've nailed like all but like a couple little cross grain things and you just need something to like, obscure some cross grain, lines or whatever, going over those lines with a scoop is like the best scenario for that.
And was that shellac?
Yeah, it's a little bit of shellac. I just wanted to see what it's doing. Once again, like this would have been a good piece of wood to hit with some bleach first. I'm mostly just showing the filling technique. Actually, the taper of the glue isn't so bad. I might actually bleach this one and try touching it up. How's my is my head in the way, or are we looking pretty good?
So far, so good.
Okay, so this is like on these. This is what I want to see in terms of like deciding whether I'm going to stop or not. So I'm coming out here, and I'm actually sanding like right in here. You can see I'm like I've sanded through the color. There's this like this nice line of the nice line of the scoop plus the void of the color here. That's pretty good. That tells me that scoop in this location is down below the layer of the finish. A lot of these things, like how they look, is going to be completely determined by, I mean, you're going to put some finish over the top of it, but if you have like these weird kind of like angular, it's a little bit thicker on one side, a little bit, you know, thicker on the other side, like it can really make, even if you have a good joint, even if you have the right color, like it just catches the light differently when you roll it around, and that like is a complete tell in some of these repairs. So I got like a little bit of CA over here. I'm interested to see what is going on. Might poke at this a little bit. So that right there, other than the horrible mismatch of mahoganies there, and it's really hard to tell on my screen, but I would be pretty excited about touching this up if it was from the fit standpoint. From the color of the wood, it's a little rough. So yeah, any questions about that? That's basically fitting scoopies with a gouge.
Hey, Ian, could you hit that with wood bleach at this point? Or I've never used it. Could you bleach that where you're at right now?
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna bleach it really quick, and I'll put it in the. It's probably gonna take a little bit longer than we have for that bleach to. I mean, maybe it'll come out, but. I quit using wood bleach a long time ago because I had a run in with it on some spruce, where it made the spruce like kind of punky. Like when I went back after it was bleached and sanded it out, like I got all this kind of like fraying, like really hard to deal with, just kind of like disintegrating effect. I don't know. I haven't had that experience on the mahogany. I've bleached some rosewood too, and haven't had that experience on rosewood. But boy, it was really hard on spruce on one project of mine. So I would probably avoid using this on spruce, unless there's different information. I don't know. So this is the B part. Okay, we'll let that sit for a little while. So this second wound is the one that I wanted to go over, kind of the chalk fitting strategy that I did on that 335. This was produced with a 5/16 brad point and a 1/4 inch brad point. kind of off center. Basically, all you want to do is you want to give yourself something that isn't a circle. You know, like it's not that hard to fit a circle. This is kind of a challenging shape, figure eight. And so, get my chair over here. So if this was a wound that I was dealing with, one of the things that Iris kind of hit me to is that, you know, you don't want to have like, you don't want to have the walls of your wound like straight up and down. Like you're not going to like chalk fit, you know, into this, you know, tight joint. You have to have some taper, but you want that taper on the walls of your wound to be crisp at the top. Like when it goes in, you want there to be like this nice crisp line that is produced. Like if you just kind of have this mushed out, almost like how we, you know, kind of how I do the grind in veneering technique. You know, like I'm sure there's like just a lot of slack is being picked up by virtue of the fact that you're crushing the parent wood and you're crushing the veneer wood together or whatever. So a little bit of mush doesn't hurt. But when you're chalk fitting, mushy, you know, mushy walls of your parent wood are going to lead to like pretty sad results. You're just not going to get a very crisp line. And the crisper the line, like ideally you would have it like, you know, straight up and down. So your line would just be like this crazy faint glue line. But I mean, it's virtually impossible to fit like that. But you want it to be like a fairly fairly shallow angle with this nice crisp line, because that crisp line is what will kind of give you that very faint glue line. So on this one, kind of going around it. Ted, tell me if my dumb head is in the way. Kind of coming around it with a knife. I've also been coming around it with a gouge. On the 335 scoop that I did, I definitely went around it with a gouge and just, you know, opened it up just enough to where I didn't have like a mushy edge. Can everybody see this line right there? Is that, I don't know if it's, everybody kind of see what's going on there? Is that clear? Ted, is that clear what's happening there?
Yeah, the kind of beveled edge on the hole.
This doesn't come out well on Zoom, like what this looks like. Then I'm going to redo it as an actual produced video and get the camera in here and strap the camera to my forehead, because this is maybe a little, this is going to be a little low res. All right. So this is what I'm now pretty excited about. This is Frisket. It's low tack. This is artist business here. This is available on Amazon. This is super low tack. This has the basically the tack of a damp piece of notebook paper. Pretty easy on the finish. So the first step, I'm gonna kind of square this. Mama pajama. I'm gonna put this across the wound. And the first thing I need to do is kind of get like my initial cut of wood that I'm going to fit. And I've found that just using this and going around the outside with the pen, doesn't have to be perfect. We're just getting kind of a initial chunk of wood thing. And then I'm also going to put some lines in here for grain orientation. So my grain's going this way. Peel that off. That on with the grain orientation, kind of roughly going with the grain orientation of your of the wood. I'm going to go to the inside of the get a fresh blade. How's the top of my head doing, Ted? Still there, Ted? Can anybody hear me?
Everything looks good.
Okay. So I've got that cut line there, which is probably helpful, but I'm going to go ahead and give it some help with some pencil lead. This is it's also good to maybe denote which way things are going on here too. Especially if you're like, if you were gonna like totally A game this and you were trying to figure out, you know, which way you wanted the run out to go, you might want to, and it wasn't like entirely clear which direction it was going. Like with this shape, it's pretty clear which direction it's going, but you may want to like, if you have a top and a bottom to it, you may want to denote it before you cut it out. Go right back and cut this out on the bandsaw. So on small stuff like this, and this comes up quite a bit, like if I'm shaping this, I usually glue this to a dowel. It's just it's easier to deal with. Actually, I guess I probably shouldn't have included that side, but we'll get there. Can people see the cutting happening here, Ted?
Can you move it a little more? Yeah, perfect.
Okay. I would probably do a lot of this on the disc sander, by the way. But I don't really have a camera set up over there. Okay, so this is gonna go back on. What's going on now? I'm gonna bleach this other piece really quick again. I think we're getting a pretty good result. So the first little bit of chalking I'm gonna do is gonna be without any kind of guides. I'm going to throw some chalk on here. Basically, just kind of shaving it in. Press that on there, kind of overlapping a little bit. And it's going to give me a pretty good indication of where I need to trim from. Can you guys see that chalk where I'm trimming to?
Yes.
Yeah, so you're doing that with the frisket on the piece.
I'm doing that with the frisket on the piece. This is just a rough cut. I want it to get like kind of inside the frisket line.
Got it.
All right. Kind of lining the grain lines up. I'm gonna take some binding. To start off with, I'm gonna clip myself like probably 4 little sections of binding with fret cutters. So I'm not 100% sure on Friskett's ability to withstand CA glue. So I'm not using a lot of CA glue on this. But I'm putting like a little drop of CA right on the very end of the end of the binding. I'm gonna take it. Throw it down like such. So this is what I did on that 335, except I did it with packing tape that I like spent a lot of time detacking on my shirt. And I was pretty nervous about it.
Did you mention already what type of tape this was specifically?
This is Frisket.
Oh,
This
it's
is,
that's what it's called.
Yeah, this is clear gloss finish, low tack Frisket.
Oh, nice. Thanks. I haven't heard of such a thing.
It's something I ran into when I was in high school, trying to avoid real schoolwork in the graphic design program.
Hey, Ian, I don't know if I missed something. Why are you putting the binding on there?
Because, so what I'm gonna do, I forgot to say that's a very good question. It's very fashionable to tell people they've asked good questions. That's a very good question, Eric. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put chalk on this thing. And I'm gonna press this down into the chalk, and the chalk is gonna transfer to my piece of wood that I'm gonna put on the that I'm gonna glue into this, right? If I was to like put this even just like a little bit in different spots every time, I'm gonna be marking different spots on this piece of wood. And so basically what this is indexing that piece to go into the as close as possible. I mean, there's still probably a little bit of wiggle room in there, but as close as possible to get that little piece of wood into the same spot every time, so that my chalk marks are reliable. Does that answer that question?
Yes, definitely. Thanks, bud.
Okay. Phew.
And thank you for the compliment on my question, too.
It's an excellent question, Eric.
I feel fashionable.
I'm not saying it's the most excellent question that's going to be asked today, but it's got to be up there, I would think. All right. So this is the fancy German chalk that Iris recommended. It is really nice. This is the chalk that a third grader recommended. It's pretty good too. So this is the cheap Crayola chalk. What I would say is you definitely do not want to buy anything that's advertised as dustless. What we're looking for in this chalk experience is the dust. So get yourself some of the dustiest chalk you can find. I didn't get good results just coloring the area with the chalk. For one thing, we've got the frisket on there. That's not like super groovy. I just found that if I dusted this up by kind of shaving it in there, then I came back with a little paintbrush and kind of gave it like this, I was getting some really good transfers. So can we all see what we got there? Pretty easy to see why we got that pattern, right? It's off of the thing. So one thing I'll say is, like, I'm a little bit over on the frisket, like on the cutout on this, which is probably not ideal. If I had this to do over again, I would probably have made this frisket piece just a little bit wider in its footprint. That way, my index could come in a little bit over time. But so I'm going to come in and basically just start doing what we were doing before, but almost kind of mimicking the angle of the cut that I put in there to make sure that the walls weren't straight up and down. The taper. Sorry, it's hard for me to do this and talk at the same time.
So you've cut out the frisket where you're fitting the piece.
Exactly. Let me get the dust off here, and we'll get a tight shot on this. Can everybody see what that looks like? This is cut out in here. When this goes on here, it's like yo. Anybody unclear on what's going on here? If you are, I'll tell you that it's a really good question. Okay. So this is rinse and repeat right here. This is why we all got into Luthery, which is to squint at tiny things. We seeing that pattern?
I'm not up on all my carving tools. What kind of blade are you using?
So this is I believe this is a Japanese knife. It's supposed to be hollow ground. I've like gone past the hollow, and I don't care. I'm a total heathen, but it works for me. I've taken the tip off of it because I probably would have broken it anyway, because what I would use the tip for, I want it to be fairly rigid, and an actual tipful tip would not work for me in most circumstances. So I blasted that tip off just kind of preemptively. If I'm getting out of camera range, just tell me and I'll put her back in.
Is a gloss frisket the way to go?
It is, because we're also, once we start squirting color on this, we're going to use this frisket to mask for the color. And so the gloss, just like gloss lacquer will tell you what, high gloss lacquer will tell you what it's going to look like once it's high gloss, and I don't know if you remember what we talked about, normalizing sheen during touch-ups with naphtha. It's kind of the same thing. If I put like the non-gloss frisket on there, it's going to give me a worse color read, just by virtue of diffusing the light coming out of it, I guess. So.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Everybody see that little faint chalk line around that thing?
Yep.
It kind of looks like it's chalky, all around it. It's actually probably more the exposure of the camera, but there is actually like this like faint little ring around the whole thing, which is the ring that I'm really going after here. Does everybody remember how black that looked when it was wet before? It's actually looking pretty good with wood bleach. Is any of this coming through? You guys able to see the chalk at on the cutting? I know it's pretty tedious stuff, but
Yeah, you can see it.
Ian.
Yeah.
What's your price point on something like this?
well, it depends. I mean, so those scoops that I did on that guy's 335, I charged like I think $800 for 2 of them. So, I mean, it's not cheap. And you know, I did have some time into that, but it didn't. I redid one of them probably twice, so it was a little like I had some bad luck on one of them. Otherwise, it would have gone fairly fast. But we're almost to the glue in phase of this too. Like, you know, Alex Jones, the guy that did the chalk fitting on the Monte Leon, he did tell me what he charged for that, and I think he did pretty well on it. But yeah, it's definitely want to section yourself off some time. So one of the things that I'm noticing is, you know, as I do this, is I'm just kind of like looking at the chalk and peeling the chalk away. It's maybe a little hard to tell on this camera, but that shape is starting to look an awful lot like that shape, the recess shape there. So I know that it's going fairly well. It's kind of like one of those things where it's hard to see the forest for the trees, and then you get done and you go, oh, I guess that is that shape. And all you've really been doing is like just kind of paring away chalk marks the whole time. So something's starting to happen here too that is a little bit hard to see on the camera, but I'm starting to feel like a lock in when this goes. I know I've got like these plastic binding pieces that are kind of indexing it or whatever, but there's like an extra level of like, oh boy, that's really fitting in there now. That's happening that you kind of want to look for on that. Like it's fairly satisfying, really. Everybody's, let's see here. Like I'm definitely working that angle into it too. It's hard to see, but we're getting that lip around that. One thing I'm starting to see is I'm starting to get chalk marking like on the inside of it. Like it's definitely starting to mate up with the bottom of the wound here.
Are you employing a push and wiggle technique or is it a straight?
It's just pretty much a
Vertical
push. If you see me wiggling, it's probably just I'm just flexing or something. I've heard of people tapping it. It seems like it would probably transfer pretty good if you tapped it. At this point, like it's very tempting. Like if I wanted to clean this up or something, it'd be very tempting to just kind of lick my finger and wipe something off. Moisture is probably your enemy at this point. If you want to clean something off, grab some naphtha and just kind of dab some naphtha on there. It'll dry off pretty quickly. Boy, the contrast is not great on that. Maybe I will do it just a standalone video. Can everybody see like that shape and that shape are starting to become hyper similar? One nice thing that's maybe nice about having the frisket tight to the wound is that once we glue it on, it's going to prevent squeeze out from interacting with the finish. So I'm starting to get more marking here from the chalk on the inside part of the donor piece. Okay, so we're getting like good chalk up in here, good chalk in here, still hanging up like right here. Everybody see what this is looking like now? It's like, ah, boy, it's almost like it got kind of a little bit of a top hat look to it. Everybody getting a good gander at that. Danny, you're not paying attention. Danny's Luthen. Let's see here.
Fixing some chip out.
Everybody see what that kind of looks like there? So one thing that's happened here is that I've trimmed in these edges, and this is kind of what I was talking about losing your indexing. So I've trimmed in these edges enough to where my indexing pieces are not exactly grabbing them tightly anymore. So it's a little bit of a problem. It's not a super big problem because I fit in the process, I fit this so tight that it's starting to index itself just by virtue of fitting into the hole. So, but it's something to think about. Like if I was really like going after this right now and I was gonna like 100% A game this, I'd probably pull my frisket off, recut, and then redo all of these like indexing points just so that I had a solid index point based on this new outline. Because this outline has been trimmed down enough to where it's not the same that it was before. You see this kind of wiggle around thing happening here. So now I don't know that I'm ever gonna get like a full like chalk pattern on the bottom of this, but this is looking pretty, it's looking pretty complete. Like I can start going through and you know, taking little bits of the bottom off to make up the bottom. And that's probably pretty wise to do if this was like, if you had any notion that anything was gonna be born stress wise with this, like if you were in some spot where you thought that the joints might be stressed, you may want to like completely made up the bottom, but I'm going to let the CA pick up the slack on this one. There's
Does the
this guy
chalk
with
have any-
wood bleach now, which actually it looks worse on camera, but this looks pretty good in real life. It's not nearly as dark as it was.
Does the
Somebody
chalk
have a
kick
question?
off the CA glue?
What's that?
Does the chalk kick off the CA glue like some of the
I
other?
don't know, but I'm just gonna like hit everything with like a little bit of naphtha really quick. We're gonna hope that this works. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you got to do it more than once. Like I said on that 335, I did it 3 times, twice. I don't know, 3 times on one. Do you have any intel on chalk kicking off CA, Ted?
No, I was just curious. You can mound up a little pile and squirt some thin in there and see what happens.
I'm getting better contrast on that now, right?
Yeah, you can see it from the shadow.
Let that naphtha kick off for a sec. So one of the things I'm looking at here is, you know, my indexers are loose and everything, but I'm sticking this in and I'm kind of like twisting it to see what's happening with like a twisting action to make sure that it's not like kind of like jumping up out of the hole. That's a little bit better look at what we got going on there. A little top hat action. Danny, you're not looking.
Looks like a pork pie hat.
That's right. I think that's what I was going for. So this might be something that would be good to I'm going to glue this in with CA, but in a practical thing, I might like lop this off like right here and then clamp that in with like some kind of glue that would dry clear, but also you know, be a little bit more tenacious than CA at maybe gap filling a little bit. Or swelling. I would say it glues that would like swell it together. All right, here we go.
I just did a real rednecky test with some climbing chalk, and it looks like it works really well. So if you have an outdoor store near you, that may be a handy way to do it without the German stuff.
So it looks like we had like pretty minimal interactivity with the indexing binding jobbies in the So normally, you know, super glue is pretty fast. Normally, I'd probably let this sit for a little bit. We'll go ahead and work it now and see what we got, just so we have a sense of fulfillment here. I'm already giving my grain orientation a D-.
When you use the wood bleach, how far down does it go, or is it pretty surface?
Pretty surface, which is nice because if you don't like it, you can usually raise some raise some color with a little bit of sanding that is similar to what you started with. All right, can everybody see that? Still a little weird. So we're a little rough around the edges because of some chipping finish or whatever, but that's like in terms of like halfway decent fit on a weird shape. I'd consider that like pretty much ready to paint. Like I'll bring it down just a little bit tighter, but this is like, let's see here. Everybody see that? And there's a little bit of finish chip out like right here and stuff, but this is a pretty good result. I wouldn't be pulling this back out to try it over again. And yeah, so that's how I would chalk fit over finish. Any questions? How long have we been going, Ted? Hour 48?
Somewhere in that neighborhood.
All right.
Got 2
Well,
hours on the recording.
Next time we'll do some painting and paint these up, and we'll get the airbrush out. And so this particular finish schedule is, the color is both pour filler plus toner coat. So we'll get the airbrushes out and put red toner, little micro squirts of red toner over this and get her going on. But unless there are any more questions, I think that's about it for today.
Are you going to be using just the stuff from the Ding Kings, like the Jeff Jewett kit, or
I think so. Yeah, I think we'll stick with that stuff just for the sake of, like I'll talk to what Fountain City used. They might have used some Lockwood dyes or something like that. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to forget the finish schedule and try to like show you maybe the process that I go through trying to intuit the finish schedule. So, or at least intuit it in a way that I can, replicate it with the stuff that I have. The idea that you're always going to have the exact materials that a manufacturer uses is something you probably need to get out of your head, because very rarely ever going to be the case. And different dyes, even in the same color, different dyes look different. So, all right, everybody. I will see y'all at the next Luthalong. If you have any questions about any of this, my email, ian.davlin@gmail.com, hit me up. I'm going to take some high-res photos of this stuff, and I'll maybe even produce a video that is on the chalk fitting that's maybe a little bit more high-res and kind of in focus than all the zoom. Can you see this stuff? So anyway, I'll talk to you all later.
Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Ted.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ian.
Take care, guys.
Yeah.